Hello, and welcome to another episode To the Point, Landlords in New Brunswick. I'm Jason Fillmore, your host. And of course, as always, I have Jeff Murray with me, who will be coming on momentarily. Hello, Jeff.
Hey, how you doing, Jason?
How are you? I can't hear you.
That's
so
okay.
I was worried about. Can you hear me?
Yep.
So you're in Moncton right now. I don't know if anyone can hear you. I'm going to test my sound. So my sound's fine, so I'm not sure why I'm not hearing you. But anyway, that's fine. We'll get to you in just a moment. I'm going to bring on our guest just to test his sound first. So, Jerome, if you can hear me, I'm going to bring you up.
How's it going, gentlemen?
Can you hear me? I can't hear you either.
I can hear you.
Strange.
Yep, I can hear Jerome.
I'm going to test something. I don't think we got anyone watching here anyway.
Perfect.
So I'm just going to log in, and I'm going to see if I can hear us. Hello. Yeah, I'm not. Aaron's watching us. Hi, Aaron. And she's probably laughing because no one can hear us. I'll see if she can hear us at all. Can you hear us? See what she says. Okay, so I'm just going to put you guys back down for a second. See if we can get this figured out. Okay, let's check on this here. Comments on, comments off. I'm not hearing a thing. Jeff, you can still hear me?
Yep.
Okay, I can't hear you. But my sound's checking fine.
Is it your headphones?
This is a pain. Let's check on this here. What's going on here? Test, 1, 2. Yep. I can't hear you. But my sound's checking. Speaker. Can you hear me now? Try talking, Jeff.
Hey, I'm here.
For God's sake.
There's a delay, Jay.
I can't even hear us at all on the. I have us up on here. I can't hear us on here either. So I'm just going to put this on. I wonder if we can pause this at all. Try again. 1 second. Hear me now? Try talking, Jeff. Hello, back again. So I guess some people can hear us just fine. I guess it may be just me that can't hear. So I'm going to bring Jeff back up. He should pop up any moment.
All right, there we go. How's it going, guys?
And there he is.
We'll bring Jerome
Jeff
back
Murray.
up.
How are you?
Good. I'm doing really well.
I cannot talk to you because I can't hear you. So I'm going to let you talk because people can hear you. I'm just going to pop down.
Yeah.
Just give me a
So
moment,
guys,
I'll be back.
we've got Jerome from Naborly.
All right, so I guess people could hear us, which isn't a problem. I can't hear anybody.
Yeah.
Oh, can you talk there, Jeff?
Yeah. Can we bring in Jerome?
Yeah, we can. I can actually hear you now.
Okay.
Okay, just one moment. I don't know if there's any feedback. I guess people can hear us, which isn't a problem. I can't hear anybody. Okay. Okay, so I'm going to bring up Jerome now. Just 1 second. He is from Naborly. And there you are. How are you?
There you go.
Excellent, Jay. Jeff, how's it going?
Good, good. Thanks for coming on,
Having
Jerome.
some technical
Thanks for
difficulties on my
having
end,
me.
apparently.
No worries, no worries.
So, Jerome, what can you tell us about Naborly and that maybe a lot of people probably don't know? I know we've been using you for the last couple of years. It's gone very, very well. We've been sort of keeping it tight to the chest, of course, but your marketing team has been doing a nice job. It seems people are starting to find out a little bit about you. So, what can you tell us about Naborly and how things have been going and maybe how long the company's been around?
Definitely, I think the best place to start that a lot of viewers will probably empathize with is where our company started. About 4 years ago, our founder, who's currently our CEO, bought his first investment property. He was 21 years old, out in Kelowna, British Columbia. He spent a ton of money renovating it. It was a bungalow. He split it into 2 legal units, a basement and main floor, and went ahead and went to rent it out. He did a bunch of Googling. He didn't want to use a property manager. He said, I'll do everything myself, figure it out. I know what I'm doing. He's that kind of guy. And started Googling, how do I have tenants apply? How do I market it? How do I screen tenants? So Google told him, put it on Kijiji, put it on Craigslist, get some tenants through, and then have them fill out a rental application. So he did a great job, got a bunch of tenants to tour through both the units, and handed over a paper rental application, asked them to show up if they were interested to come back with their own credit file from Credit Karma or Borrowell or Equifax, one of the services, and a recent pay stub. And on the application form, the tenants would fill out information about themselves, who they are, where they worked, where they currently live, who their landlord is, and how much money they make, basically who's moving into the property. So with all this information, he ended up moving forwards and approving one of the tenants. Now, this tenant was a lovely lady at the time, seemed like everything was going well. She showed up in her nurse's scrubs for the tour, said she had just come from her shift at the hospital. He called her supposed boss. Turns out she was a great employee. She's always on time. Everything seemed great. Called her landlord, and they said she was a great tenant. They're very sad to lose her. So he said, you know what? All this information looks great. I'm going to move forwards and have this tenant move into the upstairs unit. Well, he got his first month's rent check, and sorry to say that was the last time he got any money from her. Fast forward 6 months. He had learned basically on his own how the process works to evict a tenant in British Columbia. That's fairly standardized across Canada. There are some nuances, difference in New Brunswick, Ontario, Quebec. However, nonetheless, he had to go through this process and learn the hard way. It took about 6 months when he finally got to a point having not collected any rent the entire way through, spending a few $1,000s on legal fees, and having about $10,000 of property damage caused by the tenant who had decided to put an above ground pool and then empty it into the downstairs tenant's basement unit, finally negotiated with her to leave the property. All that being said, he almost lost the property. He almost couldn't pay his mortgage because of the amount of money he had lost on it, and said, this is crazy. I am never, ever investing in real estate again. Instead, he decided, I'm going to build a company that solves this problem for other property managers and landlords. And what had happened, the tenant had shown up, provided information. The references she gave were friends who posed as previous landlords, posed as current employers. The credit report she had handed over had just been photoshopped. She'd screenshot a picture, put it on top of her own credit score, handed it over to him. He didn't know any better. I mean, this is the first time he's doing it. And the typical landlord here in Canada, they only own 1 or 2 rental properties. So they only screen tenants about once every 5 years. Nonetheless, he ended up in a bad spot. He's like, I'm going to fix this. And so what he did, he started doing some research, and he found that a good portion of the rental market, a lot of landlords look at credit, and that's a really good place to start. The biggest problem with credit, and the way that a lot of landlords and property managers look at it, is a tenant has to have over a certain credit score or they're not going to be suitable for the property. They're not going to be able to afford to pay it. The problem with just looking at credit, not to get too nuanced here, is that a good chunk of renters, they don't have good credit, not because they're not responsible at paying bills on time. They're just young or brand new to the country. They've just never borrowed much money. They haven't established a credit score and built it up. So he said, you know what? The right way to solve this is to build a better credit report for the rental industry that doesn't just look at people's credit card payment history, but it looks at everything, their monthly cash flow. How do we verify income properly? How do we look at somebody's cost of living? If they have a 5-year-old child they're moving in with, how much is that going to cost them on a monthly basis? And how does this entire equation fit together? That's where Naborly started. We started off with the Naborly report. And I think about 2 years or a year and a half after we launched is actually when we met Jeff for the first time in Toronto at a show. I think it was the Investor Forum a few years ago. That's when I joined the company. And back then, we were charging about $30 per Naborly report that would be produced. So the way it would work is a landlord or property manager would sign up for the service, send out a Naborly rental application to the tenant. The tenant would fill out their information, upload their ID, income documents, and submit it to us. We would pull their credit report directly from Equifax, push all of this information together, verifying their income, employment, and identity from the documents they've uploaded, and spit out the Naborly report. So that would essentially give a credit score on the tenant based on their likely chance of default in that specific unit at that price. Everybody with me so far?
I'm with you.
I'm with you. It just go and ask for this proof. We could, ask for a credit report or get one ourselves. But you really simplify it. Is that not right? And you kind of bring it all together, basically allowing us to carry on amongst our day, waiting for that report to come in.
Yeah, exactly. Like at the end of the day, what a lot of landlords want to hire property management for is not necessarily to make 10,000 reference calls. They want the rent to be paid on time. And a property manager's job is to do that and also take care of the property just like it's their own. And obviously what you guys do for a living is so valuable to your clients, where they're out of town or they don't have time to take care of their property. All they have to do, hire you guys. You guys get to use a tool that allows you to be able to screen a lot more tenants without having to make a ton of reference calls, digging into nuanced information. A company that's an expert like us can help and give you guys a tool to help do this within your business.
No, and it's been a great tool. I mean, I've been doing this for 15 years, and I remember making those phone calls and trying to track down, their references, even if it was a legit reference. I mean, sometimes you'd get their roommate or their buddy saying how wonderful they are, and then they end up not being that wonderful, and then having to chase after credit reports and things like that. So Naborly, as a property management company, the tool has been very valuable because it saves us so much time.
Well, it's great to hear. You know what, I should add on the flip side of this, and you guys I'm sure have a ton of war stories here, and I hope not too many people watching do as well, but when things go sideways, they don't just go a little sideways, they can go off the rails. And if you get in a situation, particularly here in Canada, the system's set up to very heavily favor tenants when it comes to evictions. What I mean by that is that it's very difficult to evict a tenant for default on rent compared to the United States. In the United States, depending on the situation or depending on the location, it can often take a week, maybe 45 days at most to go through an eviction. And I talk to landlords all the time where it might take 5, 6, 7, 8 months before they actually get an eviction and actually can start the process of chasing the tenant for the money that's owed to them.
No, I've done it. I know all about it. So with the Naborly service, and it's my understanding that it's no cost to the landlord to do these reports. So how do you do that? How do you make it, that so cheap with all this the service that you give?
It's a good question. So we're definitely not a charity. We are a business, and we do need to make money, and somebody's got to pay for the honeymoon I just got back from. Speaking which, I don't know about you guys, but I got about 10 pounds of Paso and red wine to work off right now. So that's why I'm standing at my desk, not sitting down. So no, we originally, we used to charge, as I said, we used to charge $30 per report. And what we found in the research with our own customer base was even scores that we're giving tenants that were good scores, some of those tenants were still defaulting on rent. And what that really means is that no matter how good we got at predicting a tenant being able to, likelihood of defaulting on rent, anything can happen, right? You could have the best NASCAR driver in the world, still needs car insurance because somebody's going to crash into him at some point. He has no control over that. A tenant could go through a situation where they get a divorce, lose their job, get sick, and all of a sudden, even though they have an 850 credit score and a 6-figure income, all of a sudden they can no longer afford rent. And we just can't predict that. So the real solution in the tenant screening industry is not necessarily to just best assess the risk of a tenant, but actually eliminate that chance of default. And we realized the only way to build a product that could actually do that was collecting a ton of data. And what I mean by that is running as many rental applications through our system as possible and getting feedback from our landlords of how those tenants that we screened actually perform. It's very expensive to do that. And in order to grow fast, we needed to basically open up the market to as many people as we could. So we decided to stop charging for the Naborly report, which gave us a ton of customers. To date, I think we've screened about 250,000 tenants through the system. Wow. And that's given us enough data to be able to build a product, which I'm sure you're gonna ask about in 1 second.
Absolutely. What was I gonna ask? That's a lot of screening.
we're getting into
me out there for a
minute. That's about, so you got 250,000 people that you've screened in the last so it's last 4 years.
4 years, yeah.
Yeah, and so you found at the beginning when they were charging, what was this like? Was the feedback that landlords were getting a better product they felt, or a better product, I guess, better tenant? I know I felt that way. I felt much better even when we were taking a chance on somebody. I still felt better about it because I felt like we knew everything at that point.
Yeah, it's, you know what, when you hire a property manager to manage your property, you're generally doing that because they know that's their business. That's what you guys do. You know more about it than the landlord does. When it comes to tenant screening, that's all we do. And so we're seen as experts in the market. And for organizations like yourself or for an independent landlord, they want to be able to have the confidence that an expert in that industry is helping them out and either reinforcing or questioning the decision they're about to make on approving a tenant.
Yeah, and I think that was a big thing for us, that if we did have a tenant that failed, I felt confident enough I could go back to my owner and say, we did what we could do. I mean, these sorts of things happen in our business, but at least we could, and look ourselves in the mirror and know that we did what we could do to make sure that that we were putting the best person in there possible.
Yeah, absolutely.
No, absolutely.
Yeah. So with that, so you're growing it. You started opening it up to free. I think it was free for maybe the past year and a half or better. And so recently now you've opened it up, and now it's Naborly Shield.
Yeah. So
what can you tell? I know everybody's pumped about it. We've started using it. What can you tell us?
I'm very excited to talk about it. This answers your last question here of how we're actually generating revenue. So February 1st, 2018, we stopped charging for Naborly. Had this massive amount of growth, ton of screenings coming through the system. That gave our underwriting team the ability to have enough data to confidently produce a product that would actually eliminate the risk of evictions. So the way it works now with the Naborly Shield, which was launched about 4 months ago after about a year of beta testing, is after you get one of the Naborly reports back that helps you choose the right tenant, you're also going to get a quote for Naborly Shield. And if you end up purchasing Naborly Shield for a tenant that moves into your property and they default on rent for whatever reason, doesn't matter, they lose their job, they refuse to pay, they disappear in the middle of the night. If the tenant doesn't pay, all they need to do is to email Naborly, submit a claim saying this tenant has not paid. Naborly will transfer the entire month's rent to the landlord within 24 hours. So they have money in their account for that rent guaranteed for the entire lease term. At that point, to the landlord or the property manager who's happy at that point, instead of the property manager or landlord hunting the tenant down to try and collect rent or go through the landlord tenant board process for eviction, our paralegal service, or we will hire paralegal service in the area, will actually cover the entire eviction process themselves. You guys are experts in the field and already do that. So we're actually able to reimburse property management companies for their eviction services as they go forward. So essentially it guarantees the rent for the landlord and takes away the risk of them having to navigate the landlord tenant board process themselves.
It almost seems too good to be true in some cases when you talk about rental protection coverage. And one thing that we want to make sure about is that, I've spoke on this, but we can't call it insurance because out our way, you can't sell insurance unless you're an insurance, licensed insurance broker. So, it's a rental protection coverage. And I know I was a little skeptical. We slowly brought it in. I think we put it on 2 or 3 tenants. Lo and behold, we actually had one. I can speak, and Jason got a note yesterday. And you know what? It was paid. We put the claim in yesterday, and the money came in today. So I am no longer skeptical. Because it just, with these types of services, you just never know, like what kind of processes it's going to be like. And Jay, you can speak on the process. You went through it yesterday.
Oh, the process was really easy. I got a phone call from your office. It's basically asking, we need a copy of the lease, what information that I had on the tenant, why they left, was there any damages, sort of things like that. So it took like 10 minutes of talking, and they had money sent to us, like I think this morning or this afternoon.
Yeah.
For the lost rent. So it was really fast, really easy. I couldn't have asked for a better service. It was great. And I was pleasantly surprised.
Yeah. It's good to hear.
Jerome, what sort of background, like how does somebody get that on them? Like how do you determine who gets it and who doesn't, or who qualifies and who doesn't?
No, really good question. It's similar to how Naborly's been producing reports, kind of scoring tenants, like a credit score 400 to 900, depending on a lot of it has to do with cash flow, I should say. It's about 500 data points working in the background, and the real smart people at our company, not in this office, but sit on the other side of the wall, the people that are actually underwriting the risk of this product, they've come up essentially with a risk algorithm for each geographical location we're located to assess the chance that a tenant's going to default. So that we're looking at things like credit history. We do look at trade lines. We look at people's payment history if they have any outstanding collections, but we also put together a cash flow profile. So if this person is making $3,000 a month net after tax, and they're spending $1,000 of that on rent, we're going to look at what they're going to spend the other $2,000 on. We pull in statistics from StatsCan, different databases, other information that we're able to aggregate and say, how is this person going to be able to afford this property? If they've got a 5-year-old child at home, it's going to cost $432 on average a month in this postal code in order to raise that child properly, right? On top of that, you have someone's commute costs. Are they making car payments every month? If they're commuting 15 kilometers to and from work every day, what's the cost of fuel, and how do we factor that into the monthly cash flow equation? All of that information is getting pulled together so we can properly underwrite this and say, what is the actual chance of this tenant defaulting on rent, plus the unexpected things, right? If something happens, a car breaks down, can they actually handle a $10,000 hit where they're going to have to pay out of pocket? Do they have the ability to borrow that money based on their credit information? All of these factors come together to help our underwriting team produce the risk analysis that we do. And that's how we price the Naborly Shield product.
That's great. And I know with us, because there is a cost for the Naborly Shield, we actually put it back on the tenants. So we will say, hey, we can approve you, but we're going to have to put some protection on you because you're a higher risk, and your rent's going to increase by $25 a month. So as a landlord, as a property manager, that cost doesn't come out of our pockets. It comes out of the tenant that is being protected, which I think is great.
Yeah. And
you raise a great point there. The way that our system, the way the entire rental market has worked, probably I think since the 80s, is essentially we either take a last month's rent or security deposit, and that's the collateral that's being held by property and landlord. We can draw upon that. And down the road, the way that our company sees this working is we're going to be entirely replacing security deposits, entirely replacing last month's rent deposit. And what that does is a benefit for tenants, which not a lot of people really talk about, but not everybody can come up with 2 months rent that needs to move into a property, even though they can still afford it. And 2 months rent for a young family that's got a lot of bills to pay, that's going to limit the areas that they're going to be able to move into and put their kid in the school they want to. So if you can eliminate that cost, maybe turn it into a monthly fee like the Naborly Shield is, which is generally about 3% of the monthly rent, it makes it a lot more palatable for tenants and affordable to move into the properties they actually want to. That's the way the industry is going, and that's what we believe.
And so what are your thoughts on, I know if I've talked to you about this before, but with roommates, so you've got the Shield, but you've got 2 roommates, and the split coverage, is it covering both? Is it just covering one? Is it giving me, at the end of the day, we just want we want our rent paid. Doesn't matter what way it's coming from, I guess. What has Naborly done to deal with those situations when it comes to roommates, husband, wife situations, that sort of thing?
Yeah, really good question. So I'll give you kind of a 360 view of this. When we assess the risk of tenants, let's just say it's me and my wife recently of 2 weeks, move into a property, we're probably splitting the rent down the middle by the books, right? I make a certain amount of money every year, not as much as I probably should make. She makes a certain amount of money every year. And with that, we're able to afford the rent. Let's say I'm paying $1,000 of a $2,000 a month property, right? Naborly is going to assess the ability for me personally to cover my share of the rent and assess the ability for her to cover her share of rent. We're both individuals and we're being analyzed as such. Now, you're going to get a quote for Naborly Shield on each one of us. So basically, Naborly is going to price the risk of me being able to pay my $1,000 and her being able to pay her $1,000. Keep in mind, the lease has I can't remember the exact terminology, but I think it's joint and severability. So if both of us are moving in, we're supposed to be paying $2,000, we only give you $1,000. It doesn't really matter who it comes from. The tenants, us collectively, haven't paid the rent in full and therefore are breaking the lease. So if Naborly Shield is covering both of those individual tenants, me and my wife, and it's covering the full $2,000, we're going to be covering the entire amount of rent when the tenant owes $1,000 to you guys. Was that a little too complicated?
No, but I guess to my point would be, we get two people apply. One person we can get the Shield on. The other person maybe isn't as great.
Right.
What do we do?
Yeah, that is a really good question. This is something we're actually getting. We're sharpening the saw on, if you will. So right now, the way it works is we're pricing individually, as I said. Now, let's just say we're not able to verify my wife's income for whatever reason. She has no proof that she makes a certain amount of money, or maybe she doesn't actually make any money. What we'll do is we'll look at pushing the entire share of rent over to one of the applicants and underwriting the risk based on that applicant's ability to pay the entire share of rent.
Okay.
So working in the background, kind of what you guys can't see, are these numbers getting pushed around, and how the underwriting works is quite proprietary.
Yep. Okay, so that's good. So you're making those kinds of changes.
Yeah.
Yeah. Jay, do we want to?
That's great. So I've opened up for questions. If anyone watching wants to ask questions, they can. We'll keep talking here for a bit and see if anyone wants to have any questions here about Naborly or Naborly Shield. And we'll just go from there. So as the questions come in, I will read them out and post them on the screen. So, Jeff, do you have any questions since you're...
Yeah. I want to kind of see what's the next step, Jerome. Where are we going? What are we seeing down the pike?
Big question. I could talk about this for hours about where I think the rental market's going and where real estate's going in general, but that's probably not that interesting if I go on a diatribe here. I think in general, just to touch on this high level, I think that as we get there's 4.5 million rental properties in Canada, right? 80% of those rental properties, is 3.5 million, are owned and operated by independent landlords. And they quite often hire organizations like Canada Homes for Rent to manage them. What's happening is it's becoming more and more unaffordable for somebody my age to invest in real estate. It's the way that the market's going is the price of real estate is going up and rent going. People are getting compressed cap rates. They're getting a lower return on their investment. And I think what's actually going to be happening in the future is you're going to see a lot of fractional ownership where you have 3 or 4 people coming together to purchase an investment property, or down the road, even digitized coins, kind of like cryptocurrency, if you will, where you're having 100 people purchasing one property as if it was traded on the stock exchange. And if that's actually the case, if that's the future, organizations like yourself are going to have a ton more business, because individual landlords are not going to be operating as many of these properties themselves. They're going to need experts like you guys and services like Naborly to manage those properties for them. I think real estate's going to be become more of a commodity than it is today.
Interesting. And do you find with, is there the next step with Naborly Shield with this? Do you find is there additional services that Naborly is looking at to continue to add on to what they're already doing?
Absolutely. So there's a ton of problems in the real estate industry. And I say problems because the way that our business is built out is we focus on problems that we see in the industry, and then we try and solve them. Monetization and making money is a way to actually help solve those problems. But ultimately, there's a lot of things we want to fix. And we've started with tenant screening, and we've got our foot in there. But where we think things are going to go, there's a huge portion of the rental market, tenants who are not having their rent reported to any credit bureaus, okay? And what that means is that every single month, when someone's paying their rent, the biggest expense, and I've been paying rent for the last 6 years, probably, I don't know, $150,000 in rent over the last time, none of that's been reported to Equifax or TransUnion, and there's a huge data gap there. So my likelihood of getting approved for a mortgage is not as high as if my rental on-time payments were reported to a credit bureau. So down the road, data that we're collecting and able to help out with, specifically with rental payments, is going to help people that are young and maybe don't have good credit scores be able to get approved for loans and finance things a lot earlier in life, giving them a leg up. There's a lot of systematic poverty that's caused by data gaps like this. We really want to help that. And there's a ton of products, a ton of partnerships we could do to help solve that problem. In addition to that, one of the other kind of interesting parts of the industry is tenant insurance. Now, depending where you are, it could be the law to have tenant insurance. Sometimes it's written into every lease, but it's not actually enforced. And it's very rare for a tenant ever to be evicted for not having tenant insurance. So if you have a fire, if tenant causes a fire at the unit, immediately, if they don't have tenant insurance, it's hitting the landlord's insurance, right? Premiums go up. They're the ones that are taking the ding for it. We think down the road, there's probably going to be a product where we can wrap everything together. The tenant insurance, Naborly Shield fee, and everything's packaged in there to really de-risk the entire real estate investment, both from the landlord and the tenant's perspective. So there's a lot of good stuff coming down the pipeline before I get into anything too top secret.
Awesome.
Oh, that's great. Just going back to tenant screening. I know I had some questions I wanted to bring up. First of all, would be number one, how do you sign up for Naborly? So if you're a landlord watching this and you don't use Naborly, how would they engage with you to get it?
Really good question. First, I'd point them to you to hire you guys, and then you guys can use us. But if they're not in the St. John area, they go to www.naborly.com, Naborly. Top right of the screen there, they can click sign up. It takes about 3 minutes to create an account, and they can send out a rental application exact same time. So if somebody's about to rent out their property, they're ready to take some tours on, don't do what our CEO did back in the day and just Google what to do. Go to naborly.com, sign up for an account, and make sure that you're choosing the right tenants and protecting yourself.
Well, that's great. And I do urge everyone out there, where it is a free service, take advantage of it. I know just from using it ourselves, I noticed there's places where we can report tenants as well. I don't know if we started doing that, but how does that work? So if I get a tenant that we've evicted, we would report them to the website?
Yeah, so this is one of the kind of data factors or data points that we need in order to build our underwriting. So we've got I can't remember how many tens of thousands of landlord customers across North America now, but what will happen is landlords will report information, and it's very difficult, obviously, for us to verify that if that information is correct or not. Keep in mind, it's kind of like calling a reference. We don't know if the person on the other end of the phone is actually telling the truth. It's very difficult to verify that. So right now, we're not compiling a database of that tenant. What we're doing is using macro amounts of data, and our underwriting team is using that information to apply to different geographies, different demographics, to try and understand trends of where people are more likely to default based on other data and information that we can use to help our underwriting get smarter, sharper, helping landlords and tenants more.
Oh, that's great. And again, I want to remind anyone watching, they can ask questions in the comments. We will post them on the screen and answer them as quick as we can. I got another question I would have would be with tenants applying. Now, currently, we get them to each roommates fill out their own application. Can they fill out just one with more than two people?
Currently, no. Each individual tenant needs to fill out their own application so it can create their own individual risk profile. Keep in mind, when there's two people moving into a property, one might make $25K a year, the other might make 36. One has 4 years of work history, the other has one. One of them's 45 years old, the other's 27. There's so many different variables that are working into figuring out if that tenant's likely to default on rent or not, that we need to look at each individual on a specific basis and analyze the risk individually. That's why we have two separate applications.
Okay, makes sense.
And Jerome, like what kind of when you're proving income, what are sorts of the things that you're looking for from a tenant base to prove that income? Is it only a pay? Because people are paid in so many different ways now, it seems.
Yeah.
When I explain the pay stubs to people, they're just like, some of them don't even understand what I mean. Like pay, like. Anyway.
Well, McDonald's has an app. Their employees have an app they can upload to their pay stuff.
What are you looking for to try to, when we're telling people about this, because a lot of people that have applied with us now know what it is, but you get the people that have never heard of it before, and it is we are probably one of the only ones that do this type of screening out this way, I think, and they're not quite prepared. We try to prepare them for what they're about to do or what they're going to fill in. And I think the more people that start using it, the more common ground it'll be. But, what are you looking for? How to make it work?
Really good question. So we have to balance at all times. We have two customers, right? We have the landlord or property manager, and we have the tenant. We're responsible for both of them, both for data security, also for risk assessment, and making sure that everyone gets a fair shot, leveling the playing field so people aren't using biased information. So when a tenant's filling out the application, if they've got a full-time job, it's pretty straightforward. They can upload one of 4 documents, and we walk them through the entire process of exactly what those documents are and what we require to see on those documents. So it could be a pay stub within the last 30 days, or it could be somebody's on disability. It could be their biweekly check. Our tenant screening team, once they get these documents in, verify if they're actually legitimate documents and they meet our criteria or not. Now, I would like to add in a little story here. We've gotten better and better over time. When you screen 250,000 tenants, you see an incredible amount of information coming through, and you understand where people get choked up. It's we had a gentleman, I think this was a couple of weeks ago, who uploaded that he was self-employed, and self-employed people have more of a difficult time proving their income just because of the nature of their businesses, right?
Yeah.
And so this individual uploaded a picture of themselves smiling there with gold teeth and a fan of $100 bills sticking out, saying they made $40,000 a year. And our team was sitting there trying to verify this income. There's not much we can do in that situation. But I should say, if we're not able to verify someone's income, what you're going to see is you guys will get the report back saying we haven't verified the income, but instead of you having to chase the tenant down, we'll automatically email the tenant, tell them exactly what we need and what they did wrong. And we're usually able to approve about 70–80% of people's incomes in that first and second try overall.
Yeah, and it's not to say that, that's it. We can't prove your income. Sorry. We've had tenants come in with their pay stubs. Like, for whatever reason, they had a hard time uploading it. They couldn't get a decent picture, and they just come in because we can still approve the application regardless if it's been verified or not.
Yeah.
But it still gives us the final say regardless.
Yep.
No, and at the end of the day, like a tool like Naborly, it's not the be all and end all, right? The reason that people should hire experts, hire property managers, is real estate is about humans. Like, it's one of the most interesting investments because you can have impact. You paint a wall a different color and you're going to push the rent up by 10% because people have an emotional attachment to the apartment. Screening process or an application, they're humans. They're going to make mistakes. And a system, no matter how good it gets, automation is not going to be the be all and end all. And there's always going to be a need for property managers to fill in the gap and fix situations and control certain circumstances. There's a 95-year-old who doesn't know how to use email. They're going to need your help to get through the application process and get them in the property. There's always going to be a need for you guys to fill in the gaps and look at not just the objective data that we're giving you, but the human elements of the business. That's why you guys you guys crush it out there, I'm sure.
No, absolutely. We've had many cases where we've approved people with bad scores because at the end of the day, they got a bad score because they got a divorce. So their credit score was crappy, and that was the only reason. So there's always outside factors that present themselves. So it's not always cut and dry.
Yeah.
So it's good to get the report. There's tons of information in there. It helps us so much on our end. At the end of the day, like you said, the human element, there's always other things that we can use to make that final decision.
Absolutely.
All right.
So again, I'll ask anyone that wants to ask, and this is usually what happens in these shows. We'll go on, and just as we're about to sign off, the questions start coming in. So I'll ask one more time. Anyone out there has any questions they want to ask while we still have Jerome here about Naborly or Naborly Shield, please, put it in the comments, and we will address it. Jeff, you have anything to add?
No, the last thing I just wanted to add is just when it comes to pets, because that's always a big one for landlords. And you offer the area where they can actually upload a picture of their pet so that the landlord is able to see it, because not everybody brings their pet to the showing. So that kind of gives you an idea of what you're in for it if you don't like certain size of pets or what they are. We've had snakes, we've had mice, we've had rats, we've had dogs, cats, rabbits.
Snakes.
That's all snakes. Yeah.
We had a goat once.
Yeah,
come on.
Yeah.
Seriously, she had a pet goat.
Yeah. Some people.
Oh my gosh.
There's some different.
Well, you know what? I used to live in New York City, and I had about 10,000 pet cockroaches in my apartment, but that was the landlord's pets. Those were not mine. I promise you that,
man. For sure. Jerome, we really appreciate you coming out and answering some questions for us and getting the information out there on Naborly. We think it's a fantastic product. We're excited about the future and what it's going to bring, and it's to continue pushing Canada homes forward. And all the best of luck. And we look forward to speaking with you again when you launch some new products.
Absolutely, guys. It's an absolute pleasure. We've been working with you for a couple of years now, and you guys are, you're at the forefront of looking at new technologies and ways you guys can serve your clients better. So we love working with guys like you. I really appreciate you having me on the show today. Thanks for the time.
Thank you very much. Nope, we had. So that was great. A lot of good information there.
Yeah, very much so.
Oh yeah, no, it was fantastic. I appreciated him coming on to address it.
Yeah, he's Jerome's very knowledgeable with their products and what they're going to be doing in the future. So we'll see what's going to be coming. But yeah,
exactly. So anyone just tuning in or that's been watching, you want to get Naborly, that has scrolling at the bottom of the screen, the website that you can contact them. If you have any questions, you can always email us at info@canadaforhomesforrent.ca, or you can see right behind me. Here's our office number. We would love to hear from you. If you want to give us a call or looking for an apartment, just give us a ring. All right, Jeff, you're in Moncton, so I'll let you go because you probably want to start heading home soon.
Absolutely.
And I will. I'll let you go, and I'll be signing off here in St. John.
Perfect.
All right. Thank you. Have a good day.